Welcome to my new episode on what it's like to be a student at Minerva University. Join me with my guests today as we get into what it's like to be a student in a university that has no campus, where there are no exams, and where they really teach you to embrace uncertainty and risk. This really is a must listen, and I'm so excited to be sharing this with you today. Hello and welcome. I am Carmen Tomás, your host today, and I'm delighted to welcome Martina and Alberto. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having us.
Okay, thanks for being here and thanks for coming to share. Martina and Alberto, Martina is a current first-year student at Minerva University, and Alberto graduated, and he was part of the first cohort of students at Minerva University, and he graduated 5 years ago. So what attracted you? Because this was not like a very common program spec that you must have come across when you decided. So perhaps I'll start with Alberto. Alberto, what attracted you to Minerva and how did you find it?
Thank you, Carmen. So I had actually started university already. I was studying in the UK, and I just found myself not really enjoying what I was learning in the classroom and seeking opportunities outside of the classroom to learn new things. So I think I signed up to every single club at my university, every single event that I would join. And I guess I sought learning opportunities in those spaces that I couldn't find in my more traditional academic experience. And that's exactly what I was looking for in Minerva. When it showed up on an article, I started reading about it. I just became enamored with the concept, and I wanted to go to an institution that institutionalized to some extent the things I was doing outside of the classroom. And they were looking for the first group of students to join the first cohort. And I'm really glad that I joined, because it was also a really interesting experience for us to be building the university as we were going. So building the plane.
Wow. So, I mean, you took a risk like most people would not. That's quite adventurous. So what was the degree you took at the time?
So with the Minerva degree, you don't choose until your second or third year. I ended up studying economics and politics, and then ended up minoring in history, which was a great decision. I learned about history the very last year.
Wow. Okay, fantastic. So Martina, you're part of the new cohort. So tell us, how did you find about Minerva and what attracted you to it?
Yeah, well, actually, I have been wanting to go to Minerva since I was 12 years old. It's really interesting because everybody's like, what? How did you know about this university since you were 12? Well, actually, my mom read the book that Minerva has written by Ben Nelson, which is Building the Intentional University. And she told me about this book, and she was like, yeah, so there's this university. It has a very different concept. And by the way, it doesn't have exams. And I was like, oh, wow, wonderful. So I read the book when I was 12, and I fell completely in love, and I have been wanting to go ever since. And it's crazy that I'm actually here now.
Well, okay. Well, you'll tell us whether your expectations have been met. So Martina, so I understand that at present, you're just sitting the first year, and then you still haven't decided what you're going to major in, yeah?
Yes, exactly. We are actually supposed to declare our majors in a few days, and I'm thinking of doing social sciences and computational sciences.
Martina, right. So you're in the very early stages of your first year at university. So let's start talking about the campus at Minerva, because the first thing that is very different about Minerva University is that you do not come to a campus. So how does this work, and what's the experience like for a first year student particularly?
Yes, well, rather than having a specific campus in one specific city or part of the world, we have the world as our campus. And it's an amazing concept that I have been looking forward to since I was very little. And we travel the world while studying, and we go to different cities.
And so how is this? How does this come into the learning? Okay, so you're moving around, you travel to many cities in different countries as well. This sounds to me a bit unsettling, especially for an undergrad student. So how does that become part of your university degree?
Yeah, it's usually very weird for people to hear me say that I go to a university that doesn't have a campus and that it's completely online. So we basically have a very active learning approach. Minerva uses their own platform that they constructed that's called Forum, and we have very active classes, very dynamic classes, and we do them all online. So we all live in one same residence hall.
Yeah.
We just take our classes online.
Yeah.
And then different, for example, assignments that we do that are based in the city, which is why we go to the different cities, because each have different things that they can offer us.
Yeah. So give me an example of how this works. So this is an assessment that it's got to be related to the city. So how does that work? Give me one example of something you've perhaps already done.
Yes, of course. So the first year, it's all about figuring out what we want to do for the second year and what our major is going to be. And we have four subjects. So for example, one of them is complex systems, which is everything about social sciences. One of the assignments we had to do was to choose an organization in order to break it down and understand how this complex system works. And so we were at full liberty to choose the organization we wanted within San Francisco. We couldn't go to San Jose. We couldn't go to Oakland. It has to be in San Francisco specifically because it's the city we're based in. And it was our choice to choose whatever organization we wanted in order to apply all the knowledge we have acquired and do a whole research paper and fully maximize it.
So do you find the organization you want yourself, or is that you have to find it yourself?
Yes, we do have to find it ourselves. We have to. It's one of the main concepts that we have. Like, we have to explore the city we're in. Like, it's an opportunity given, and not explore this city. Like, even if it's like just for one organization, like we're still gonna do it, obviously. But it's kind of like an incentive in order to do it even more and explore.
Yeah. And how? Yeah. So how did it work for you to gain access? Because I'm sure that was an experience, but it's not easy to get into them. And also people are busy. So how did you orchestrate this yourself and manage that?
Yeah, well, of course, Minerva provides us with a lot of different places that we could go to. And we obviously have the internet. We have full access to like different places in San Francisco. And it's not that hard to find places. It was just you had to do a little bit of research and find like what it is you're interested in. And I was very interested in NGOs specifically, and I had been working in a food bank in Spain, so I was like, maybe it could be a good idea to break down an NGO and see how it works, and maybe a food bank. Called Glide, and that's how like we were able to like everybody what they wanted to do.
So the topics are different, but basically the brief is the same. So you're all going and you're given guidance on, okay, you're going to research these aspects of the organization, but each person has developed their own topic. I mean, it does make sense.
Also, for like we had Minerva gave us a list, like a very extended list of places we could go to in like very different places, but also there's the option of like exploring a different organization that you want to focus on.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's move to the other part. So you've mentioned like there is a platform, so there is something that will be more familiar to most of us. But there is an online learning platform, and you've mentioned active learning. Let's go to that. What does that mean at Minerva? Because active learning people will come up with their own definitions and ideas, but what's the experience and what does it entail at Minerva?
Well, very interestingly, we have a very different concept of education. We have what is called an inverted classroom. We have to do a ton of pre-work before our classes. We have to do readings. We have to be prepared for the topic of what we're going to be doing in class. So that is already something that allows us to be very active in class because we know what we're going to be studying, what we're going to be talking about, what we will be debating, and what we will be discussing in class with all our classmates. And so applying these concepts right before the class is the best way to be able to interact actively in a class. And so we have this forum that we have like a classroom of maximum 20 students, I believe, and the classes are incredibly dynamic. We have what are called prep polls and like reflection polls, which are basically questions that start like at the start of the classroom about what we have read for our pre-class work, what we have, like the activities we've done before the class in order to prepare, and how our concept is at the beginning of the class. And later we have activities that we take part in during the classroom, like for example, breakout activities with 3 classmates, and we apply the knowledge that we did to a scenario, like a real life scenario. And there's also something very interesting I should mention later, which are called HCs, which is a very amazing approach to how academics are taught. And so this classroom is amazing. It is very interactive. We have like emojis in order to like react to like our classmates' responses, and we have a class chat that we can interact with it at the same time, and teachers can see how much time we talk, and if we have talked a lot, if we haven't talked a lot, and but yeah, like each time we're talking, we come like inside the frame, and it's very, and we always have something to talk about, and the teachers are only allowed to talk 3 minutes each time they.
Okay, so there is a rule.
Yeah, there's a rule.
Wow.
And they have a competition actually of who is going to speak less, because Forum actually records how much time they speak.
So there is a report, and this is a very important thing. That
yes.
So basically, so just let me get this right, because it sounds great. So you do the preparation, which will involve reading. Do they prepare some videos as well? I mean, is it just a mix of materials that you go through on your own, come to the class? There is a pre-poll where they see the prep poll, where they see whether you got the concepts or what you think. And then there is a scenario and you work collectively on that one. Yeah, and that is tracking the interventions from every student. I think that's really interesting. And then lecturers, they're there, but they're facilitating. They're not taking over and transmitting their knowledge, but they're kind of there. Okay, that's amazing. Well, that really sounds like active learning. Plus, obviously, you being leading on the other those assessments and projects you've talked about that are location based, and you're conducting this from day one. So it's not something that they're saying, "Oh, you'll do this." I mean, they're throwing you right there at the deep end from day one. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, the next part that I'm really interested in is Minerva is university without exams. Okay. So how are you assessed? Let's start with that. So what are the assessments like if you're not having exams?
Sounds very appealing, right?
Well, yes.
Students it is, trust me. And well, it is to me, a very like calming and less stressful way of teaching. And rather than having to acquire a whole bunch of knowledge, like 20 different units with 7 different parts to each unit, and then in the exam having only like 3 specific parts of those 20 units and to answer those, we are assessed by every single class that we take, our comments, like what we think about different our different perspectives, our prep polls, our reflection polls, and class activities with our classmates or individual activities. And then we are also assessed by our assignments, which we have quite a lot of assignments, but usually we have like 3 or 4 for each subject, and they each have like a percentage that they weigh, and it's like a way to fully assess your like one student as a whole, and not through one single assignment.
No, absolutely. And actually, that's really good practice. So there is continuous assessment that is embedded in your participation and your contributions. So that is embedded there. There's not a deadline. You just have to do your job, which is turn up and do the classwork and be involved. But then the assignments. So you've already given me an idea that obviously you've described these projects that are in the context where you are, where you're living. So tell me, so in terms of the assessments that you do independently, are they all like this one you've described about going to the NGO and analyzing it and doing a project around it? Or tell me other types of assignments that you've done or you're asked to do.
It really depends on the subject. So for example, we have formal analysis, which is all about programming, mathematics. And one of the assignments that we had to do was we had a workbook, and we had to focus on coding, answering specific questions that we were given. And they're very different. It really depends on the subject and what we are really trying to focus on.
Okay, so there might be things that you're given by the tutor, which is something that is more familiar to most people, which is just kind of an exercise. How does this work from a student perspective? So you're given the freedom. Easy thing is to go and use ChatGPT when you've got to do something really hard, or how are you finding this is working with students?
I'm going to be completely honest. I do use ChatGPT for some things. Like I never did coding before. And I do rely on ChatGPT sometimes in order to fix my codes, for example. But we are taught in class in a way that, like, if you pay attention in class, you're going to be able to do the assignments because it's what they're based on. And, like, just to confirm, I use ChatGPT, but we have what are called AI statements. So we have to be honest in one of our assignments to, like, whichever AI tool we used and explain how we used it, like provide the chat that we have with ChatGPT, for example, to be completely honest and prove like that you have used this in order to help you, because obviously we are in a very technological world and we are advancing every single time, every day, and we are taking advantage of these tools.
But it is embedded and it's addressed, it's part of the task, and you didn't feel the need to cheat. You're just using it in the ethical way, just to help you. And actually, that's what you're going to do when you go on to work, because you said you'll still do it. Okay, amazing. Just following from assessment, and then we will move on to Alberto's, and then how life becomes, how life is after being at Minerva. But in terms of feedback, okay, so we've talked about the assessment part, and you've told me about how this is done continuously and it's embedded in your learning, the connections and your flexibility to choose your own project. So how does feedback work? And people are always wanting to improve, how they help students to improve. So you are a new student, you're a first year student, which is the hardest year actually. How are you then setting a direction? Are you clear on the feedback you're receiving? How are you able to act on it?
Excellent teachers, like excellent. I love absolutely all of my teachers. I've had 4 of them last semester, and I have 4 new ones this semester, and I have never been happier with all my teachers. And they all give very specific feedback. They give us feedback for every single class. Like they have teacher assistants from like senior classes, and they usually like give us feedback for our like sessions, so the classes, but the teachers focus mainly on the assignments, and they give us very detailed feedback all the time. Like every single thing that we can improve, whether it is like in the academic paper wise, like visually or like internally, and how we apply every single one of the like concepts that we have learned, and they give very detailed feedback.
So is that communicated to you talking in paper? How do you receive this, and how is so clear and specific?
Well, we usually receive it online, like on the platform that we have, but we also, whenever we don't understand anything, we can freely go to their office hours and talk to the professor individually and ask them, yeah, I didn't really understand this part of your feedback, or I wanted you maybe to expand a bit more if you could. And you can like always ask them, and they will be there for you at all times, and they will help any single thing you need.
I remember that there is a student dashboard where you can see your learning goals and the learning outcomes, and you can track your performance. Can you talk to me about how that works and how you experience that, and how valuable or not valuable that is from your point of view?
Yeah, and I'm an addict to the learning outcomes. I spend most of my week like focusing on what percentage I have and what it is I'm wrong, what it is I'm not doing right. And it's very exciting because we have a lot of different concepts that we learn, and we have what are called like HCs, which are habits of mind and different concepts that we learn, and they are all spread out in the learning outcomes, and each session is like dedicated to a specific amount of HCs, or maybe one single HC. Like for example, hashtag break it down, and how we break down a problem. But just for you to have like a little idea, and we have a grade from 1 to 5 for every single one of those HCs, and then there's like an overall for, like, for example, interacting effectively, critical, and it's a great way to see how you're doing and what it is you can improve. And it's like very specific things that you can improve. It's so broken down that it's so defined.
So what you see is like a matrix with your broad learning outcomes, and that's broken down. And then from what you're saying, then every session you do know what learning outcomes or sub-elements of that are going to be part of that or assessed. And you're getting, from what you're saying, you're getting real-time feedback. So it's not like you're having to wait let's say normally 3 months before you get the first set of feedback. So because you're saying you're being assessed in the classes so is that how it works? I mean, it sounds very dynamic.
Yes, exactly.
Well, okay. I've never heard a student say that they're addicted to learning outcomes.
I never thought I would be addicted to my learning outcomes. I was so afraid of my grades, like all the time. Like I was like, no, I prefer not to see them. Like now it's like I'm on it all the time and see what I can improve and what it is I can do.
Wow. So you're regularly checking, and it makes sense because you've just been in a class or submitted something and you're getting the feedback.
Oh, yes. And I think everybody is like this, because everybody wants to improve, and everybody is like very, like we're all so excited. Like we love our classes and we love our teachers, and it's just, it's a very, an amazing academic system, honestly.
Alberto, so now we've heard from Martina about the experience on the campus that is actually the world, and then the no exams assessment, and then this dashboard that presents the learning experience. Sounds like a great learning design and experience. Now, having been part of the first cohort of students that graduated 5 years ago, when you look back, how would you say that having been in that cohort shaped your career?
Yeah, so I think for me, there were a couple elements. I would say the first one was the actual Minerva experience and being connected to students from all over the world. It really opened up my eyes to what the world was. And I think also encouraged me to do something in my work that was more more global and more ambitious than maybe what I would have thought initially. It also taught me that education is a space that I deeply love, and I think a lot of the things that I had been doing in my life made sense then after under that umbrella of education and learning. And I would say for me, the other angle is being in the first graduating class was a very profound experience. I guess that taught me that I really enjoy being in a startup environment where things are quite unstable, and I think we all took a big risk with being there. But one interesting learning that I remember having in the first year was realizing that all the staff, all the professors, everyone had made a very similar decision with their careers, and that was a really amazing bonding moment with the university staff. And I think very rarely do you have a situation where everyone is really on the same boat, trying to kind of row in the same direction and get something to succeed. And I think that's something that is very unique about the early stages of a startup, of any type of place. So I think ever since I've become a lot more comfortable with the uncertainty that comes with a startup. And I actually think we need to be a lot more a lot less risk averse when it comes to starting new institutions, new universities, in a way that's guided my next step into building the company that I run now. But I always encourage both students and people that can become founders to take more risks in education.
Yes, so we haven't spoken about what you do now. And I think, in fact, I do know that is very much tied to your experience. So tell us a bit about, because it did shape very profoundly your career choices. So you're still working in education now. So tell us a bit about what you're doing and how that also, I mean, I'm hearing, yes, it was inspired by Minerva.
Yeah, so I would say the last few months of being at Minerva as a student, I started working with my now co-founder, Michael, to build Transcend Network, which is the organization that we still run today. And it supports early stage founders in the education space to build their startups that can change how people learn and work. So we help them navigate those early days and finding their first customers, getting their first investors. And we ourselves run both a fellowship for founders to kind of get the training and the acceleration that they need, and also a venture fund that invests in some of these innovations that are looking to change how we learn in a similar way and with a similar ambition as Minerva. So definitely inspired me to do more of what I'm doing now, and has helped me empathize a lot with the work of the early stage entrepreneurs that we support.
Okay, so it helped you to embrace risk, and also it sounds like I get a very strong sense of community and bonding, which again, those are things that are really valuable. And if you can prepare students for the risks of life, because that's it, that's what we try to do at universities. We are constantly talking about, well, life is uncertain, skill sets are changing, so you've got to be. So to hear that you came out of university embracing risk and felt ready for it, that pretty much to me sums up a pretty robust skill set.
And I don't think you need to be at a new university to be able to embrace those risks. I think a lot of people I've seen embrace risks in very traditional settings at universities. And if there's anyone listening who is in a position to do this, or anyone who has kids who are at university, or anyone who is a professor or administrator, I think creating a safe space to try new things and to fail is a really powerful thing to do at any institution. And I think Martina knew what she wanted from a very young age, which I'm extremely impressed by. But
Me too.
I think a lot of us were a lot more lost than Martina was, and I think to allow for exploration, failure, and those risks, I think is a really important part of the learning process.
Yes. So Alberto, actually, this is really important, because how can everybody else recreate those benefits? And you're talking about, you've thought about this because you were in a more traditional environment. And so you can see, and you're thinking they're missing opportunities, even if you're a traditional setting. So could you give us some insight into how you think traditional settings, older universities, that are harder to change, what could they be thinking about? Small things they could be doing.
Yeah. So a few ideas come to mind, but I guess just focus on two. I think one is, if you look at the Minerva experience and what Martina has shared, there is so much agency in the process of learning, right? You have to take matters into your own hands. You have to, let's say you're studying something in economics or in computer science and history, you have to really go and bring that into the city that you're in. And that requires a lot of motivation. And I think in my traditional university experience, there was very little space for agency. It was a lot of kind of, trust me, you will appreciate this when you grow up. And I think that's fine for some concepts, but for others, I think really creating space for agency for students to learn how to explore questions that they care about, whether or not they might be perceived as important, I think is one space that I think both parents, university administrators, teachers can allow students to build that own motivation, because I think it's something that becomes a little bit dormant when you're in an educational system that doesn't allow for that agency to flourish. And it's that's one thing that I would encourage everyone to try to find.
Yeah.
And then the other one is learning through communities. I find that Minerva being such a small group, you end up building really strong bonds, and you learn from a lot of people from different parts of the world. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to go and explore different cities of the world, that's a wonderful thing to allow your, let's say, your kids to do it, your students to do it. But even if you can't, making sure that you're exploring new things in a community that can support you is another way that I found to create that agency. For me, to share a very specific example, I always played basketball growing up, and I think that taught me a very strong lesson around the power of community. If your kid loves playing video games, allowing them to build a strong community of people that also love playing video games is, even though it might not seem like a strong educational use of their time, I think learning how to leverage a community, how to find support in a community, are all things that will be extremely useful in your life and will allow you to take more risks, because have some people have your back.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think we could go on and on. There's so much more, I'm sure. Thank you so much, because now we can have the student voice and an alumnus voice, to contrast with obviously Ben's presentation, and I think it really aligns and it really tells a story of a good design, very well implemented, and then clear outcomes and successes. So thank you so much for sharing and coming and being here today.
Thank you so much.